Conversations with Azu Ishekwene.
We're literally in the age of noise. The boom is out there and the echo is everywhere. The political landscape is dominated with news about politics, about crime, about insecurity, and what have you. Today we're talking about books and the review of books. There's a 3-decker title to the book, Working with Buhari, but I think it is more appropriate for our purpose here to just use Working with Buhari, written by Femi Adesina, which has been reviewed by our award-winning columnist Azu Ishekwene. It is titled Reflections on Adesina's Work with Buhari, and it forms the subject of the back page of Leadership Today on Conversations with Azu, our weekly diary on life and politics. Azu Ishekwene is with me in the studios to talk about his review. Azu, you're welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Julius.
In your review, you said you've known Femi Adesina as a friend and as a neighbor and as a professional colleague for over 3 decades. Tell us some of the things we may not know about him.
Well, some of those are not things that would be appropriate for me to discuss here in the studio. But one thing I can tell you about Femi is that, as I also said in my column, which is now looking more like Azu's reflections on Femi Adesina's reflections on Buhari. One thing I can tell you about Femi is that he's been a constant person in terms of his relationships with his friends, and also to a significant extent with other significant publics around. So he's a constant guy, somebody you can say dependable and constant guy. I've known that about him over the decades, from when he was when we were both contemporaries as editors, and then of course he rose through the ranks to become managing director of an editor-in-chief of Sun, and then also president of the Guild of Editors. But all of that is with the public space. One thing also that perhaps that may not be very publicly known about is that he's a very emotional person. Yes, I can tell you that Femi is a very emotional person. So, that side of him may not be as well known as his public face.
All right. He had a tough job defending President Muhammadu Buhari, who appears to be a very hard sell. Do you think he could have done better than he did?
Well, that's a difficult question. You see, if it was the Buhari of 1983-85, the Buhari of 1983-85, when he in his second coming, carried over some of that
attributes.
Yes, some of that,
popularity
to office. So yes, I mean, the problem that Femi Adesina had, in my view, or anybody who would have marketed Buhari, was also had to do with that perception of Buhari as a military dictator, and the problems, of course, he had with his media and with the media and all of that. That was certainly not an easy problem to deal with. But then, regarding what happened in the 2015 to 2023, that of course was a different phase. Could Femi and those who managed him have had a slightly different experience managing him? That's the jury is out on that. And I say the jury is out because the president himself came on an agenda and he promised 3 major things. He promised to fight corruption. He promised to provide better security for Nigerians, and also promised to fix the economy. Unfortunately, for the people who are his media managers, he's not somebody who's giving to media appearances or lobbying the media. So that, I'm sure, is an intensely insular person. I'm sure that also created problems for them. I think that in retrospect, I'm sure that there will be things that Femi Adesina and all those who managed Buhari would look back on and perhaps wish that they had handled differently. But he's got a book out there, and I have shared my thoughts on the book. Perhaps let's wait to see the debate that this book stirs. That will, of course, give us a better sense of whether I could have done better and the things that I could have done differently. But most of it is out there.
Okay, and the book and your review, I think, seem deliberately devoid of hard issues like insecurity, like the economy. Do you think he has given a fair account?
Oh, he said up front in the book that the book was not about it was not about the hardware. He said the book was basically about the software, Buhari, and his personal. It's more or less like a diary, his personal experience working with Buhari. And then he said, of course, that he left the more, the harder stuff, so to speak, the heavy lifting of politics, of policy, to people who are specialists in that area. So, as far as his reflections on his experience with Buhari are concerned, I think he gave it a fairly good shot. But there are, of course, areas that I disagreed. I had my own personal disagreements about not necessarily about not necessarily with Femi, but about our experience or my personal experience of as a public commentator about the way Buhari handles certain things. I think some of those things could have been done differently, and I said so in my column as well.
Oh, the media, a lot of commentators like you and many others in the media think that perhaps Femi's loyalty to Buhari tend to affect his judgment on public issues. What do you think about this?
Well, if you are sharing or reflecting your personal experience with somebody that you're very close to and you love intensely, value judgments, you can't really rule out value judgments because your relationship obviously will interfere. But it is his own story of his odyssey, especially 7 years ago. And you cannot deny him that the opportunity to express it. But whether he offered a blinkered view as a result of his relationship with Buhari, again, that's out there. I mean, I'll just give you a few instances where I think that potentially that relationship may have interfered, in my view, with his reflections. For example, there was a place in the book where he went to Buhari after Buhari had made certain changes, had removed the then the DG of the DSS and brought in someone from and then brought in Lawal Daura. And he went to him. I mean, Femi went to the former president to say, look, Mr. President, I think that this might have an ethnic blowout, especially for a country like Nigeria where we have very serious ethnic fault lines. And then Buhari responded, according to Femi, to say, oh, don't worry, things will balance out. But of course, we saw that for that period, things obviously they didn't balance out. I mean, they did not balance out. And they did not balance out, especially in terms of the consequential postings. Because there are postings and there are consequential postings. Even though he tried to, in his first tenure, he tried to provide a more balanced composition of his cabinet in terms of the numbers. But whether in his first or second tenure, you find that, and especially in his second tenure, the consequential postings became a problem. And not only the postings themselves, but his attitude to managing his own team. He tended to lean more towards abdication than delegation. That was a problem. But obviously, it was not a point of serious reflection in Femi's book. But I saw it clearly, and I thought that I needed also to mention.
One last question, please. Femi said, I'll say somewhere in his book, that he received just about 1/3 of his salary as the managing director of the Sun as a presidential advisor, and yet people scramble for this position. If you were in Femi's shoes, would you accept an appointment of this nature?
I can tell you, because I know this, that there were periods in Femi's sojourn that he thought that he himself had to sit down and ask himself serious questions about whether he had taken the right decision. But I think on the whole, his sense of commitment and loyalty to his principles sort of prevailed and assuaged any feeling of material loss that he may have suffered on account of his accepting that appointment. But you see, there are certain decisions that we take that may cost us materially or financially, but we feel that we are compensated in other areas, especially in terms of the service that we provide and the impact that that service will have. I would hope that on the balance, when he looks at the balance sheet of his service, on the financial side, he may not have, he may have lost a lot, but I'm sure that if he looks at the experience probably that he gained while serving, and the connections and network, and the fact that he served for those 8 years, truly devoted and committed to the man that he has loved all along, I'm sure that that more than a switch for any material or financial losses that he have made in the 8 years.
Well, these are just snippets from the column on the back page of Leadership Newspaper, Conversations with Azu. Please visit our site, azuishekwene.com, for more. Like, subscribe, and share our content. Thank you for coming on the show, Azu.
Thanks for having me, Julius. It's been a pleasure.
Conversations with Azu Ishekwene.